Thank you very much, Andrew, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Vietnam, Vietnam has said that it is close to signing a new reciprocal trade agreement with the United States. Deputy Prime Minister Bui Thanh Son has confirmed the development at a U.S.-Vietnam business summit in Hanoi, saying trust and cooperation remain the foundation of prosperity between these two nations. A new round of negotiations is now underway in Washington, D.C., led by Vietnam's Minister of Industry and Trade, Nguyen Hong Dien. The talks are scheduled from November 12th to 14th and aims to finalize a deal that would keep tariffs on Vietnamese goods at 20% but exempt some products. Bui Thanh Son also urged U.S. businesses to support an upcoming visit by Vietnamese President to Laos and to push Washington to recognize Vietnam as a market economy and lift curbs on high-tech exports. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for staying with us. Andrew, how could this new reciprocal trade agreement reshape Vietnam's relationship with U.S. and what strategic advantages might Vietnam seek by urging U.S. recognition as a market economy?
Well, Vietnam has been playing his cards very deftly. Don't forget that Vietnam is still governed by the Communist Party, just like China. But on the other hand, its economy is increasingly pivoting towards the West. And of course, it's benefited hugely from these sanctions and tariffs on China because a lot of operations in China are now diversifying, outsourcing some of its productions in the region, particularly to Vietnam. Now Vietnam wants to, and also Vietnam is not only on trade, on other issues. It tends to tilt towards the United States containment and also confrontation with China. For example, over the South China Sea, there are certain territorial disputes between Vietnam and China as well. So I think that Vietnam is now trying to double down on this closer relationship between Vietnam and the United States. After all, after all these years of outsourcing production, it's learning more and more some of the honing the skills in the supply and value chain in the region. So I think it's very well positioned to form an even more closer relationship with the United States and the West, the rest of the Western countries.
And what is U.S.'s motive or interest in signing this trade deal with Vietnam? How might this agreement influence Vietnam's position within regional trade dynamics?
Well, don't forget that the United States had this historical sore point about the Vietnam War, which of course war still a sore point in American national psyche. But of course that was a long time ago, and the United States is using Vietnam as a very useful ploy to contain the rise of China in the Asia Pacific. If you look at the map, in the South China Sea, and then you have the Japan, and then you have Vietnam, and then down you have the Philippines, and then you have Australia, and then India, and so this forms a very useful chain of counter measures against China's influence in the South China Sea. But of course, Trump is pivoting towards the Asia because past administrations have been downplaying the importance of Asia, pivoting towards Europe and just China itself, but now is realizing its influence in the Asia Pacific must be regained. Hence, Trump's deals with a lot of countries in Asia during his recent visit to Korea.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Andrew K.P. Long for joining us today and sharing your insight throughout our news on China. Thank you very much. Now moving on, China is urging Germany to press the Dutch government to revoke its seizure of chipmaker Nexperia. Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao made the appeal during a call with German Economic Affairs Minister Katharina Raici. The move follows a global supply chain crisis triggered after Beijing imposed export controls on Nexperia's China-made products in retaliation for the Dutch action. Wang has called on Germany to play an active role in correcting what he described as the Netherlands' erroneous practices. The Dutch government insists its intervention only aims to ensure production continuity in Europe. Meanwhile, Germany has expressed concerns over China's new export controls on rare earths, saying that they threaten its industrial stability. Now for this discussion, we welcome Jayjit Bhattacharya. He's an economist and finance expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Jayjit, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what economic leverage does China hold over Europe through its control of rare earth exports, and what are the potential long-term financial implications of Europe's increased intervention in strategic industries like semiconductors?
It's interesting to see that the bulk of the Nexpria semiconductors was actually being used by the automakers of Germany. So if the chips are not being provided directly, that itself will bring down the auto industry in Germany, which is a very significant portion of their economy. Now, in order to even build the chips, the rare earth minerals are extremely critical for that. So if the rare earth minerals are stopped and also the production of chips are stopped, that's a very, very significant leverage that China has on the European economies, and specifically Germany, which is one of the largest European economy. So clearly, if Germany leans on Netherlands, that's a very significant leaning that will happen. And Germany stands to lose very significantly if China retaliates, in case Germany decides not to push The Hague and not to push the Netherlands. And by The Hague, I mean the EU framework itself. And so it will be, it's a very significant pressure that China can put on Germany, and I'm sure they're doing that, and I'm sure Germany is going to therefore push Netherlands to seize what they're doing. In fact, when Netherlands said that they're going to take control of Nexpria, the reasons that were officially given was a little hazy. There was no clear reason as to why they were taking control. I said there's a governance issue. Now, for governance issue, governments don't step. From an optics perspective, it's not very clear why the Dutch government is taking control of Nexpria, and I'm sure China will retaliate quite significantly on this.
Right, and how do you think Germany realistically mediate between China and the Netherlands without jeopardizing its own industrial interests?
Is a very critical role in the supply chain of chips. They control a very critical production technology which allows production of chips at sub 4 nanometer, which is crucial for future semiconductors. And therefore, one can potentially say that Netherlands also holds cards in terms of the semiconductor supply chain. But the relationship between Netherlands, Germany, and China is not unidimensional. It's not just semiconductors and rare earths. There are a large set of relationships from a commercial perspective that are there, including China being a very large market for both Netherlands and Germany. And hence the pressure from China is not just on Germany, but also on Netherlands. Continuing on that process, there is a deep relationship between Netherlands and Germany. I'm not entirely sure whether Germany will invoke those relationships or would use those relationships, those economic relationships, as a leverage point. But I'm sure they'll sit down and have a conversation. I think the details are something that we can't really think of. But if push comes to shove, there is a lot of economic ties between Netherlands and Germany. They're next door neighbors. And hence, if Germany chooses, it can actually play hardball with Netherlands. Although given that they are European neighbors, they may not come to that kind of a conversation.
And also you have, as rightfully mentioned, that all these countries are very intertwined, interdependent. How might this escalating trade tensions between China and these European nations influence global investment flows in tech sector?
So that's again an interesting conversation because clearly Netherlands may not have taken this step unilaterally. They would have probably been pushed and nudged by the United States, which is very, very afraid of the fact that Western technology is leaking into China. And therefore, when it comes to investments, it's not just investments from the rest of the world, but also investments from the US, which is 30% of the global economy. And hence, maybe taking this step kind of protects IPR in a way, and that probably might even encourage Western investments to come into Netherlands. Also, given the fact that there is significant talent in Netherlands in chip building and in building the machines that are needed for building the chip. So it's not a very straightforward situation that because they have stopped one single company and has intervened in the operations of one single company, it might deter others from coming in, because the real rationale for intervening in this particular company is leakage of IPR from the West to China, and companies are very, very sensitive about IPR leakage. So if Netherlands is actually providing some sort of a framework for protecting IPR leakage, then that probably makes it more attractive for other companies to come in. Maybe other Chinese companies won't come into Netherlands, but non-Chinese Western companies would actually look forward to investing in Netherlands because it is proven that it is protecting their IPR.
Yes, with that I would like to thank Mr. Jaijit Bhattacharya for joining us today and sharing your insight as an economist and finance expert. Thank you very much. Now moving on, the death toll from Super Typhoon Fang Vong